Hi, everybody. I think all of you know me, and we'll probably have more people meeting us later this morning because we tend to run a little bit late here in the islands. And I wanted to introduce our speaker. Actually, let me do a quick PSA for the EDC. We've got a couple things that I want people to know about. First off, tonight from 6 to 7, we have our community forum, and it's a countywide event where anybody can participate. Today's topic is business, the economy, and jobs. And we want to talk about recovering the businesses and also thinking about industries that could grow alongside of our major industries in order to kind of buffer us from these cyclical, gigantic downturns and upswings that we experienced over the last 30, 40 years. With that note, we've also got Chatting to You tomorrow, which is our super casual conversation with businesses from noon to 1. And other events, check our newsletter or sign up for it because we've got a lot going on. Today, I'm excited to announce that we've got Michael Ervick from the Department of Commerce / Governor's Office. Is that right, Michael? I was never...
Actually, it's just the Governor's Office.
Okay, good. I knew there was a connection to commerce somewhere, but from the Governor's Office. And he is our state guru on all the programs and happenings at the state level. So I'm excited to hand the mic over to you to tell us what's going on. Thank you, Michael.
Well, thank you so much, Victoria. So quickly again, my name is Michael Ervick, and tomorrow I will have been with the Governor's Office for 1 year. I'm a new person to the world of government. Prior to this, I spent a very long, wonderful career as a management consultant and a business professor. I taught entrepreneurship for 33 years. I had actually retired from that and was working as a SCORE mentor. I'd been with SCORE since 1996. When we teamed up with the state had launched some new programs. And one of them is a wonderful website called business.wa.gov. And we were looking at how the state could get better connected to the communities, the business communities. And they offered me a job as the state's Small Business Liaison for the Governor's Office. I lead a team of 33 small business liaisons, each representing agencies and commissions that touch small business. And it's an amazing team. They've been in existence as a task force since 2006 and as a formal organization chartered under Governor Gregoire in 2012. And their job is to literally be into the small business community, provide assistance, and help facilitate success for small businesses. And they've been doing it for a long time. They're very, very good at it. Oops, excuse me. I got to turn my phone off. The liaisons, as I mentioned, they represent different agencies. So they have kind of a twofold role. Primarily enable small business success, and then also provide information, education that allows small businesses to understand regulations and then how to, if you will, self-regulate. It's far better for the state government if businesses are self-regulating, and we find out that if they understand what the regulations are for, they really do a much better job of self-regulating. And that means that we don't have to go into the field and address complaints or issues. So it's a great organization. We currently host, every week we host a session called SBRR, which is Small Business Requirements and Responsibilities. We were doing that for a long time as a live session. We would go around from city to city and have, we present information, what's the latest and greatest things happening with the state and small business. And then we do one-on-one answering of questions, literally hopefully solving business problems in real time. And so we just had one last night from 5:30 to 7:30. And it was very well attended. Like I said, we have them every week. And if you go to business.wa.gov, you can find a schedule and a link to register. And it's a Zoom-based webinar. And we have lots of folks who participate. And if you don't feel like asking a question an open mic, you can engage anyone in the chat session. So it's really, really great. The Small Business Liaison team not only works individually for each of the agencies, but they also work collaboratively. We have different committees, different teams. We focus on different things. And prior to the COVID-19 event, we had been working as a team to kind of plan what might the state do in the event of a recession. As you guys remember, prior to the COVID event, we really were anticipating the possibility of a recession coming along. A lot of the things that we had been discussing turned out that we ended up using with the COVID event. So it was interesting that we were very well prepared. We did a lot of things. But as you all know, one of the things that we ran into was that our systems, our technology wasn't necessarily ready for the wave of the tsunami, how large it was. And we broke a lot of systems in the process. But we were able to react fast because we had done a lot of planning. The Small Business Liaison team is involved in a lot of different things. There is an emergency operations center we're involved with. There's a joint information center that we're involved with. We also did something starting almost 11 weeks ago, where we went out into the communities and we talked to the ecosystem. Not only just small businesses, but SBA, SCORE, SBDC, NGOs, cities, counties. And we said, if we were going to build a bottoms-up recovery strategy, what would it look like? What would the state need to do? How could we help? How could we collaborate? How could we move forward? And we had a lot of discussions, a lot of really great ideas. Some of them dovetailed with stuff that we had looked at for the recession. Some of the things that we're working on in that area are what we call the economic safety net. How do we help facilitate the development of e-commerce marketplaces on a city-by-city basis? We're looking at that right now and having lots of great conversations with providers and cities. How can we create a statewide marketplace where small businesses get to provide services to other small businesses? You'd be amazed on how many small businesses would like to have access to accountants, HR people, lawyers who specialize in small business. So we're looking at how we develop that statewide marketplace, digital marketplace for small business services. We're looking at how we can do a website for assessments. It turns out that a lot of small businesses aren't currently selling online, and believe it or not, probably 2/3 of the businesses in Washington State don't sell online, and because they just don't have those capabilities. So we're setting up a website where we can do assessments and help small businesses identify the gaps, whether it's a better understanding of technology or better understanding of e-commerce. Whatever the case is, we want to identify the gaps so that we can help align them to workshops like SCORE or SBDC to help them overcome those gaps and be players in the future. When I say in the future, the probability of the second wave of this virus, this pandemic, the probability is better than 80% now. So we're not just kind of doing mitigation, say what if, we're now saying it's going to happen. Second waves are always more powerful than the first. Worst case scenario is it's 5 times more powerful. And so if we're prepared, if we've helped develop skills and capabilities to work in the digital domain, we can find ways for people to do business and stay safe at the same time. And that's the goal for those 3 projects that we're working on. And there is actually a 4th project where we're looking at how do we expand small business access to government contracts. And that's not just at the state level, that's at the city level, county, and federal level as well. So we're working with different organizations to find out how we can expand that. And that turns out one of the barriers to that is also, again, capability development. So we're working on maybe building some assessments to help identify those gaps as well. As you can imagine, we're involved with a lot of things, a lot of different communities. The Small Business Liaison team is not only the Department of Revenue and Employment Securities and Commerce, but it's also the commissions, the LGBTQ Commission, the Women's Commission, African American, Asian American, Hispanic American. All of these folks are on the Small Business Liaison team, and we're looking at all of these communities and how we can help for their specific needs in those small business communities. So I guess I've kind of rambled on. I probably should open up and see if there's any questions that you guys have.
I do have one question. You'd mentioned expanding small business access to local government contracts. A lot of our counties and towns have local legislation that requires the lowest prices. So can you help get that conversation started from your office?
So the answer is yes, and that conversation goes on frequently. And so as you can imagine, the problem is that large enterprise, and we'll call them big business, they have the ability to achieve economies of scale, which drives price way down. Small businesses don't have that capability, but what small businesses can do that big businesses can't do is there's a value equation. They're more responsive, they're more adaptive, and they can change and do things faster than big businesses can. And so what we want to do is try to align the small business community to the kinds of contracts where that value relationship is more important than price. Right. And that is where the conversations are right now.
Okay, great. So I'll actually reach out to you about that, because that's been kind of a big focus of mine for the last few years. It never quite made sense to me not to shop local at the government level.
Hey, Victoria.
Sorry. Yeah, hi, Rick.
I just wanted to clarify that. So San Juan County does have an ordinance that allows us to deviate from lowest price for a local contractor or a local.
Fantastic.
So we have like a 5 or 10% flexibility, and we actually wrote that into our emergency order when we put the order in, was to do whatever possible to support local businesses through county projects.
Fantastic. How about for supplies? I was mostly thinking supplies.
I mean, applicable across the board. I mean, the problem is on supplies, you're really looking at, oftentimes, as the speaker just mentioned, pretty significant differences. You know, talking 20 or 30%, but we do try to utilize local businesses whenever humanly possible.
Absolutely. And I would say to everyone here that out of most of the counties in the state, our county is thinking about stuff like this and many other things. Michael, I also wanted to ask you, because we're seeing the same thing where an extraordinary number of our businesses don't actually have even sometimes a website at all, and getting them to pivot to the new normal. Because even just now, we're seeing that the ones that have made investments in their websites, those are the businesses that are actually, in some cases, surpassing their income from last year, which is amazing. What resources are available at the state level for helping to pivot them to new ways of being?
So the best way to answer that is what my office does and what the SBLT does, the Small Business Liaison team, is that we literally help small businesses get connected to those resources. So there's a lot of wonderful workshops by SCORE. And if you're not familiar with SCORE, yes, it is. Oh, yes. And so there's. Yeah. Oh, excellent. So there's a lot of great workshops. They're doing a lot of workshops online right now. And they're constantly working in the communities, the small business communities, to figure out what do we need to do more. We've just had a big meeting on literally the workshops around advanced web development, inventory control, stuff like that. So I know it's definitely on their list. You also have other community assets like NGOs. I don't know if you're familiar with Ventures or Business Impact Northwest or those folks, but there are nonprofits out there that also have programs for developing technology. And it turns out if you reach out into that community, like organizations like GoDaddy and companies that build build websites. They actually have programs for small businesses where it's either low cost or no cost assistance in developing things. So the state doesn't actually provide the workshops. What we do is find them and then connect them to the people who need them.
That's fantastic. Do you have some that we could put into the chat today? Because I know that there's some people who actually, there's a couple people here who get information to businesses. So it would be awesome if we could type it into the chat box or something, or maybe you could send me an email and I'll forward it to everybody.
I can do that. That'd be great.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any other questions from anybody? This is turning into a very short, short event. Michael, what can you tell us about what you're seeing at the state level for things like, and I know that you probably don't have a full handle on like federal programs, but what are some of the pitfalls or things we can look out for things like PPP and the EIDL and those types of programs?
You know, again, keep in mind that all of these programs, whether they're federal, state, county, or city, all of them were rolled out as a rescue phase, right? It wasn't investments for recovery; it was rescue for survival. Right. And so a lot of those actions that we take, we had no idea what was going to happen, right? When that this thing was going to be this big. So the reaction that we're seeing is constantly, as we're learning about what's wrong with the program or the flaws in a program, we're constantly going back and looking at how do we fix the rules, how do we fix the situation. If you think about the intent of something like PPP, the idea is, or was, and I believe it still is because I talk to the SBA all the time. The idea was if we could keep people employed and continue to develop their skills and expand their skills and not let them sit at home being unemployed, that they would be more valuable to the business when the economy came back on the line. And so that was the original intent, was to keep people employed. And the key there for folks, because they made the program, it's a forgivable loan. The key thing for people to make sure that they're going to be forgiven on those loans is to keep really good records, right, of your payroll. If you're using a payroll service, those kinds of records are more than adequate. In the future, when it comes time to reconcile who should be forgivable and who shouldn't, the federal government's going to depend on federal databases. So things like the IRS and, did taxes get paid for this person, so on and so forth. And so having good records or having a record service that allows you to validate how much you spent in those programs covers all of that. So, but there's no, I think folks who are good communicators, when you're talking to your employees, there's going to be some employees, who are ready to return to work and are capable of returning to work. And there's going to be some employees who are going to be in situations where, because childcare isn't online yet, or whatever the case is, there's going to be unique situations. And I think that people really need to make sure that they're communicating between employee to employer, and then employer to agency like ESD, or in the case of taxes, DOR, keeping those channels of communication open. Everybody on the Small Business Liaison team is there to help people and help solve problems. We're not there to shut anybody down. That doesn't do anything for the state. So if your folks can, be willing to keep the channels of communication open, it helps solve a lot of problems.
Absolutely. Do you have any news from unemployment? I know that some small business owners locally have participated in that, and certainly there's a lot of our local workers who are participating in that. So what you got for that?
I actually brought an unemployment expert with me, and his name is Rafael.
I see his name there. So if nobody has additional questions for Michael, shall we transition to a Rafael talk? If that's okay with Rafael.
It's okay with me. I was just sitting in listening to Michael as we work together on many of these webinars, but
Fantastic.
I'll gladly try and answer some questions as to what we're doing and how things are being experienced by ESD right now.
Yes, absolutely. And while you if you would introduce yourself, I'm going to type your email into the chat box if that's okay, or
Sure, or I can gladly do it, however you prefer.
or the best email for people to get hold of you, because I know that unemployment is one of the things that I hear about the most. Actually, the great wave of PPP phone calls has slowed down, and now it's unemployment phone calls.
Okay, I just typed it into the chat for you. Our focus, as you know, has been advertised in the media, very much so, as focused in two areas. Obviously, we're looking at imposter fraud and everything that's happening within ESD, knowing that that is not a data breach on our side, and there has been no data breaches on the ESD side. It's coming from other places. And obviously, a focus by our commissioner on Operation 100 to adjudicate as many claims as possible to get money in people's hands. The balance of doing those puts you in a position of vulnerability at times, and that's why we're looking at other security options to prevent what is currently happening with the system. The commissioner, and I believe the governor as well, just feel strongly about making sure that we get people paid so that they have money to do what they need to help their families and help themselves move forward. And so those are our two priorities. The entire agency is committed, and we're hiring folks to assist us with the level of incoming calls that we're getting, because the system is also sending out emails encouraging people to look for employment if they've been unemployed for a certain period of time. So we're trying to rectify things, but we're committed to making Washingtonians at least somewhat be somewhat in a position to take care of themselves and their families. Let me put it that way.
Absolutely. And I apologize, I didn't actually introduce you. So it's Rafael Colon from
Cologne, yes,
yeah,
and I'm the small.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry about that, Victoria. I'm the Small Business Outreach Liaison for the department.
Which is fantastic. And I do want to mention to both you and Michael and to everybody in the room how amazed and just thrilled we've all been in seeing the level of response at the local, state, and federal level for all county entities. It's been like the fact that you pulled off getting unemployment to so many people in so little time was phenomenal. Literally more people than the Depression in just a matter of a few weeks.
Yes,
yeah.
It's been tough. The number of calls we get, the emotion behind those calls.
Yes.
And this commissioner, as well as all the executive leadership team and those working behind the scenes, it pulls at our heartstrings when we hear the calls of folks not getting their money. And in some cases, it's simple mistakes, but the system flags them. So I may have used my nickname instead of my full name. I may have used mistyped the social security number incorrectly. Some of them are so simple. Submitted the wrong documentation, submitted the wrong wage hours. Well, those systems are flagged by the system, and then it creates a pipeline, a very, very thick pipeline, and that's what's happened. And so some of them we're able to correct. Right now, we're in the state of having delayed payments 1 to 2 days just to make sure that you are getting the money that you need, and it's not going to some other bank account. And so that's an intentional, and yet it pulls at our heartstrings because it delays payments to folks for 1 or 2 days, and some folks haven't received their benefits at all. And so
yes.
It's very difficult on all of us. We take it personal, and the commissioner is behind us cleaning and clearing the system, but in a responsible manner that also protects Washingtonians, taxpayers, and the business community who supports the unemployment insurance system.
Absolutely. Rafael, do you have an email or a link? Because we actually have unemployed call center workers in San Juan County, and I'm wondering, can you use them? And if you can, who should we send them to?
Yes, I submitted it in the chat, R. Cologne.
Okay, good. So they're right to you. Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm actually going to send you a couple emails with businesses, shuttered call center businesses that I know are looking for stuff for their people to do.
Sure. They can come directly to me, and we'll funnel in from there. And the request was what, Victoria? Could you clarify that again?
So we've got call center workers in San Juan County who are currently looking for work. but I thought,
Call center workers, okay.
I know, right? It seems like a good mix.
There may be a nice marriage there.
Yeah, I think so too.
Let's, sure, they can direct them to me. We'll try and get them the right link, and I'll see where we're at currently with that process, and get them. I'll follow up with the resource, or just have them start with me. I think that'll be the best way.
That's fantastic. And I'm not sure, I'm thinking maybe we have like everybody's mic automatically set to off, which is maybe why we're not getting any questions. John, if you're still there, will you turn everybody's mic on? Because I don't appear to have the ability to do that from here.
It looks like everybody can unmute themselves.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's been set up like that.
Okay, thanks. So I'm just flabbergasted, but maybe there's no questions. Deborah and Krista, do you have questions on behalf of your businesses? Looks like not. Well,
Maria,
Michael.
I put a link in your chat. It's a link to our Small Business Liaison team directory.
Yeah, great.
So, if there's problems with any other agencies, or, you have questions of commissions, all of our liaisons are listed, their emails, their addresses, and their pictures. So please feel free. That's why we exist.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Victoria, I know Michael mentioned it earlier, and I'll just reinforce it to all of you and to your outreach distribution list. The webinars that we're putting on by the Small Business Liaison team, those webinars are exceptional in the sense that any small business owner that's online working with us, we have subject matter experts to answer questions. And if it gets very technical or detailed, that subject matter expert then is provided to that individual employer where they may be stuck in the system, and they get that one-on-one customer service.
That's really great.
It's just another avenue in trying to reach ESD and trying to reach some of these other agencies like DOH, and if restaurants are looking for guidelines.
Yes.
Well, the folks who can answer their questions are on those webinars, and they're providing their phone numbers and emails directly to those folks. So I'd like to share with you that Michael has a link on his site that has our prior webinar presentations and has the PowerPoint slides. And if you take yesterday's PowerPoint slides, you have emails and contact and phone numbers for the folks.
Fantastic.
Okay, so that's just an inside pearl to you and the folks that you're servicing as well.
Thank you so much.
All of you.
And I threw that link into the chat earlier.
Fantastic. And
Victoria, this is
hey,
Deborah.
Yes.
I just want to thank the two gentlemen for being on the line. I mean, I am taking notes for my members and links and whatnot, so just want to say thank you.
Absolutely.
Sure.
And this is
Very
being
welcome.
recorded, so we'll have this posted later today.
Oh yeah. Thanks, John. I should have said that at the beginning. This is being recorded. Let us know if that's a problem. Also, John will copy all the links that are in the chat, and we will get them on our website. And we can also send some of those out in our next email blast. Okay. Well, if there's no other questions, John, did you have an update of any type, or maybe Mickey, anybody with some updates?
Let's see. Well, the USDA finally started its program yesterday. Let's see. I could make sure I get the name of this thing right.
And actually, before you start, I know that Michael and Rafael have a lot to do, and so I just wanted to say a big thank you to you for coming today. I know that your schedules are just insanely busy, so I wanted to say a big thank you for taking the time to come talk to San Juan County, and also wish you well in all that you're doing. So thank you, and if you want to leave early, that's totally okay, and we'll talk about some other stuff here.
Great.
Thank you very much, and we strongly encourage you guys to reach out anytime you need us. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, John, Victoria, and others. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Rafael.
Thanks,
Thank you, Rafael.
Take care. Okay, thanks everybody. John, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. About a month ago, the USDA had announced that they were launching a coronavirus food assistance program to provide directly relief to farmers and ranchers who had faced price declines and additional marketing costs due to the coronavirus. They launched that program yesterday. It is all of the eligibility requirements and application and everything are on farmers.gov/CFAP. And we're just trying to get that out now to folks who have associates in the farming community here, in case this is something that will help them. This assistance is up to $250,000 per individual, and it can be like if there's a partnership or a corporation, then you can get up to $750,000 over 3 individuals. So the other thing is AWB had announced this last week, but now it's finally up and running. They have their rebound and recovery website, which launched, I think, last night. It's reboundandrecovery.org, and it is it's a clearinghouse for 2 things. One is for guidance and reopening resources, but the other big one is it is a PPE portal, and they're trying to match small businesses and Washington-based PPE manufacturers in this web portal to help make it easier for small businesses that may be finding that they're competing to get PPE for their employees so they can start reopening. So this is all on our Facebook page, but I'll also throw this into the chat as well.
I'm going to dive in while you're typing. Becky Day on San Juan Island is also, the chamber is offering PPE. So reach out to her if you're looking for some, or for any of your businesses are. Okay.
Christa, Victoria.
Hey, how are you?
I'm pretty good. Thank you. So that site, that Rebound and Recovery, I was on a meeting from 9 to 10 this morning with those guys and went on to that site. So that PPE connection form it'll be interesting to see, but I think it should be shared because they're trying to source locally as much as they can within Washington State, I think, but they're offering, you click off what you want. It's eye protection, the different types of masks or shields, hand sanitizers, thermal scanners, thermometers, which nobody can find. So it'll be interesting to see if people use this, how much product they have available to get out to people.
That's fantastic.
It looks really good.
Thanks, Christa. There looks like we've lost a few people, maybe when we started talking about farms, but do we want to, Christa, you are currently our guru on phases. And actually, we've got Rick in the room. Rick is also our current expert.
Rick's the guru.
Rick, you might be on the phone or something. Hey, we've got Deborah. At this point, it's just Deborah, Christa, me, and other EDC staff. Can you give us an update on, can I put you on the spot and do an update on the phases? Because I'm getting a lot of calls about that too.
Sure. What would you like me to talk about?
I think people are confused about what's supposed to be open. And so I've pointed them to various websites, but maybe just a timeline of what you're expecting for the next phase. Because I think that's one a lot of hotels.
So the state, I think, is going to continue a county by county shifting from phase 1 to phase 2. I don't think there's going to be a magic button and they push and everyone in the whole state goes to phase 2. So there's been 20 counties that have been given the opportunity to participate. We were one of them, and we got our application in on Friday, and it was turned around at 1:29 the other day on Saturday, which is unheard of in my opinion. But I think the Secretary of Health actually reviewed all of them that night and in the morning. So phase 2, basically for high risk populations, you need to stay home and stay healthy and follow everything you're doing. Of course, everyone needs to still keep hand washing. And then in our county, of course, we have the mask requirement. In businesses outside, it's okay. There's a little bit of a confusion on recreation. It right now says all outdoor recreation involving fewer than 5 outside of your household. But the thought is actually per week. So you really shouldn't be meeting with 5 different people every day. You really should kind of, if you think about your family as the unit of safety, this is basically saying you can expand it to 5 additional people versus, I think some folks are thinking about it as more than that, but camping is allowed only in the outer island non-ferry served state parks. So Susha, Stewart, Patos, Clark Barnes, Mesa, etc. Gatherings, like I mentioned, is just 5 people about it. The travel is really just within the county. So there still shouldn't be people going off island and people coming here, which we all know isn't happening completely. And then so it's the businesses, it's remaining manufacturing, new construction, in-home domestic services like nanny, house cleaning, etc. Retail, real estate, professional services, let's see, businesses, teleworking is encouraged, but like people can start opening their offices up again and again. 6 foot of separation, hair and nail salons and barbers, restaurants with less than 50% capacity and tables no larger than 5. So in essence, this is a soft locals only opening. And so the businesses, it kind of expands the businesses that are essential from the grocery stores and stuff. And it's the same kind of retail concept where most people should try to get plexiglass shields, have hand washing stations at the front, offer for someone who doesn't feel comfortable or safe coming into the business to come deliver product out at the curbside. All of your employees within contact of other people should be wearing masks and potentially gloves, depending on what they're touching. Sanitize all the areas that people are in contact, the credit card machine, the counters. And like I said, like at our stores, we have a sanitizer and mask station as you walk in the door, and then put mask signage on the outside. So there is no defined path to phase 3 yet. The only thing that is defined is that you have to stay in it according to the state 3 weeks, and Dr. James has said 4 weeks. So I think the first indication of the impact, if there is one on the health side for phase 2, will be about June 8th. So that's roughly 2 weeks from the first Saturday that we opened up. And so that's the phasing period for when the virus has shown itself, is within that 2-week period. Around the 15th is a whole other, the 15th or the 20th is about 3 weeks. Again, the state does not have any protocols on who can or what is required to move forward. But if we've already checked a lot of boxes to get to phase 2, 2 to 6 months of PPE for our first responders and medical professionals, as well as a backup 2 to 6 month amount of material that the county's holding. We have 10 nurses who are contact trained to trace the virus. We have, and I always forget one of these things, we have signed letters for ICU access to St. Joe's in Bellingham and Island Hospital in Anacortes. We're planning to roll out an asymptomatic test that follows the ones that we did a couple weeks ago, where we tested 300 first responders, frontline workers, and medical personnel. So it's sort of the concept is fish where the fish are. We don't have the resources to test everyone in the community. And actually, in my opinion, that isn't even very effective, because the next day you're not effective. But let's focus our testing on, obviously we have guaranteed amount of testing for anyone who's showing symptoms. That's not a problem. But then we start a kind of a routine, maybe it's every 3 weeks, of testing a certain group of people that are in more concentrated contact with people than everyone else. And I think we have a pretty unique opportunity to be safe as we live on islands. And I think social distancing is probably in our DNA just on a normal day before all this happened. So it makes it a little bit easier. And I'm always forgetting one thing, but we've checked all the boxes. And to me, this is like going into a storm. You can batten down the hatches and see what the storm does, or you can, put all the prep work into your boat and sail out into the edge of the storm and try to get past it. And that's what we have to do. Shutting down is, although we're more than willing to do that if it happens, but we need to be adaptive. And if the virus presents itself, we need to pounce on the virus, quarantine, isolate the people who have been in contact with that person, and snub it out. And I think we've done a really good job in the county. There really hasn't been much community spread at all. But that
Thanks
was a
for
long-winded answer to that
No,
question.
it's good. I'm glad. And frankly, a lot of the reason that we don't have widespread, we didn't have a widespread outbreak was the very reasons that you just talked about. It was the preparation. It was the isolating people who tested positive. It was doing contact tracing on everybody. So in my opinion, the county is doing unbelievably fabulous work. And I want to thank you for keeping us all safe.
And the community needs to know that we're moving forward.
Yes.
But we're moving forward only on a safe path. And
Yes.
you know, this is all about keeping our community safe first.
Yes.
And then we need to figure out a way to get our communities back to work and see what comes. And I think we all know that we also tourism will always be part of our community, but we have an opportunity to look for other ways. For example, using the fiber that we've been talking about forever as a reason to fill up some of our second home,
Yes.
maybe more permanent people. But I think San Juan County will continue to be one of the safest places in the state of Washington to live and work.
Absolutely. That's why people with second homes are now here instead of wherever it is they have their first homes. So thank
Rick,
you.
I have a question.
Sure.
So I just heard you
Hi,
say
Christa.
that. Hi, Rick. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good. Just a quick question, because I heard you mention, I didn't hear it on when Frank James talked on last Friday's meeting, but I had to leave before that was over to go to another one. But I heard you just say that did he request, or in his recommendation, did he stipulate that phase 2 would be at least 4 weeks? Or was that just a thought that he's having?
No, he has said that. I mean, he said that a couple times actually, and maybe not in that exact meeting, but he had said it that we had to be 4 weeks before we got into phase 2 as well.
Uh-huh.
So the state has a slightly looser guideline, but Dr. James wants that extra week to allow the virus to present itself.
Okay. So that's the general trajectory for us is 4 weeks from this past Saturday.
Correct. And again, the state doesn't have any guidance, and I was on a call on Friday with a bunch of other commissioners, and the question was asked I can't remember her name, the doctor that's the number 2 person at health, basically was like, we're trying to get through phase 2. We haven't even thought about phase 3. So 4 weeks, no cases, continue to build up PPE, continue our relationships with the hospitals. And then there's just going to have to be a masking strategy.
Yes.
So June 20th is a date that I would hold as a placeholder, that I don't anticipate any movement to phase 3 before that. And I don't even think it took us 3 weeks to get into phase 2. So, I would love to see us open before July 4th personally, but it really just goes how the science tells us where to be.
Mm-hmm.
And our order now ties us moving to the lodging ban to phase 3. And I understand from the bottom of my heart, all of the lodging folks that are struggling, not knowing what to do. So I guess that's why I throw out the 20th. I wouldn't cancel a reservation after the 20th yet. And hopefully in 2 weeks, like I said, June 8th would be a good indication on the impacts of phase 2. I don't think phase 2 is going to be a big deal. I think we're going to have to plan and stress and be ready in October and November for, I think, I can't remember if you just said this, Victoria, and the last call was with you or now, or the gentleman did, but we should be anticipating a 5-6X in the fall in coordination with the flu season, right? So
Yes.
I think we'll be okay through the summer and not have many issues and just have to figure out how to navigate when it comes back.
Right. The 80% probability. I think it was Rafael who said that, or maybe Michael in this call. Absolutely. And I keep stressing to people, we're in the second oldest county in the state. So it behooves us to be this careful, and we are being careful. At the same time, it's heartbreaking. I mean, I talk to business owners all day long, and to feel the feelings with them of being in free fall is hard. But we've got to protect our most vulnerable population right now. And that's why Rick is doing what he's doing and I'm doing what I'm doing to try and strengthen those business with what they can do right now. Thanks,
Hey, Rick, this is Deborah. Can I ask a question? Okay. I was on a phone call because I'm answering the phones right now, so I might have missed it, but you mentioned at the end that you're looking at June 20th as a placeholder, kind of hoping for that. Are you or any of the council or anybody going to make a statement as such to the lodging community?
I will answer the question anytime it's asked, but the problem is, that's why we tied it to the phase 3 movement. And so you can, again, if you work on the 3 or 4 week plan, it gets us to about June 20th. I don't want to set false expectations, but in my mind, that's where I'm heading. And, I've gotten a lot of grief for moving us to phase 2 or trying to move to phase 2 as fast as I did. But I also have I had 2 essential businesses, and I saw the work that we did that was allowed our customers to come in and be safe. And it didn't seem fair to me that I can sell cigarettes and beer, but someone can't go to a flower shop. And we didn't have a problem when we had staff that seemed to be sick. We got them tested and they were negative. The lodging thing is just such a tricky path, because I don't want to say, hey, this is the day it's going to happen, and then it doesn't happen. That's why I'm saying it's sort of a placeholder. And anyone in the lodging industry that's asked me, that's what I've told them.
Well, and I think we're finding in this current situation, there's no way any of us can make concrete pronouncements about anything. Like anything that I said at the beginning about PPP or any other program that the SBA rolled out got changed as we rolled. And so like with this, it's a biological exponent that's in this mathematical equation. There is no way that Rick or anybody else can predict this.
Hey, Deborah. So I would also tell your lodging folks to start paying attention to what's going on around the 8th or the 10th of June. If we continue, and it doesn't have to be one case that shuts us all down. I think it's, 1 case per 100,000 people or some,
yes.
or 3 cases, whatever.
Yes.
The number for us is like 3 to 4, and it also depends on how it showed up. We still haven't had a community spread case. And let me clarify that for a second. So on Orcas, there was someone who came from off island here and spread it to 4 or 5 people, but there hasn't been a case that's popped up that we can't trace.
Right.
So, I mean, those are the indicators that, we've got PPE storage, we've got surge capacity set up, we have access to to hospitals, we have trained staff. So the only thing that's really holding us back, unless the governor has some kind of a change, is cases appearing over time. Right. And so that's the whole thing is like, you move to the next step and you stop and you pause and you go, okay, now what happens? And then you wait to see if anything appears, and then you adapt and move forward. And I think we'll be ready in 3 or 4 weeks for phase 3 to happen. But I'm also worried about the attitude of our local population. We have to be kind. We have to be caring for people and be our normal inclusive self. I'm seeing signs posted, tourists go home, people yelling at tourists, and this is just not appropriate. And that's not who we are. Regardless of what you think about tourism, we need to be good people first. And that's the thing I'm the most afraid of, is that we're going to lose our culture. And it's just not acceptable to have people be so negative. We say we're inclusive in every other category, but somehow you're a tourist and you're a zombie, so go away. And it's just not fair or right. And oftentimes people are criticizing people that have a legitimate right to be here. It could be family members of second homers. It could be second homers. But anyway, so my biggest fear is really the people that are being mean that will prevent us from going to the next level.
Okay, thank you, Rick. And we're being, just as leery as everyone else. We all live here too. I've lived here 20 years. Barbara's been here 40 plus years. Anyway, but so too, I am getting calls from potential visitors. Like just this morning, a guy is planning to camp around June 20th, so this is good. I've been actually telling them, well, yeah, watch our website and kind of take a look around June 8 or 9, because that's when we might know more. So this is sounding good. I just wonder, like, if our lodging members ask us, should I just refer them to you, Rick, or like, What? You're on mute.
Sorry. Yes, you can send them to me. And if you have members that are having issues with the mask stuff, they can call me or Bill or, or Jamie or whatever. I don't mind. I don't want our businesses to be in conflict areas, but I don't mind addressing the issue. And part of the reason why I've been picking June 20th is that's also hopefully cross fingers when the winter ferry schedule goes to the spring schedule. So that's also a key transportation day.
So Rick, we're kind of, there is a connection though that we, I think we need to hang on to. I'm getting mixed messages from the state. The original thing I heard was that the whole state would move into phase 3 together. There are people on the call that I was just on an hour ago. This woman made mention of when a county is ready to go into phase 3. And I think what will be disturbing or unsettling to a lot of people is not so much moving into phase 3, but potentially moving into phase 3 before other counties do, like Seattle, King County, areas where we're going to get a lot of visitors from. And if phase 3 allows us to have non-essential people coming here, but they could be coming here from counties that have not met the criteria. So it gets tricky if, if the route goes that we're allowed to go into phase 3 without the rest of the state.
It's very tricky. If you look at some of the maps that show the eligible counties for phase 2, you see a huge divide in the center, right? So it's all the Eastern Washington counties at one certain line and all the Western Washington counties. And then there's this big gap in between, which is, Whatcom, Skagit, Snohomish, Pierce, blah, blah, blah. And this is why I think the state's not saying anything yet, because, it's hard for them to tell a Stoughton County in the middle of, that's at the corner of nowhere in Idaho and Oregon and Washington, that they need to stay open because Seattle is not. But our county presents itself, as you mentioned, a lot of interesting options and concerns that the state hasn't figured out how to address yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just trying to answer questions based on what the limited guidance they've given us, which is that 3-week period.
Yeah,
When we had our call on Friday with the Secretary of Health, I think it was Friday or Thursday, we were told that you should apply for phase 2, because we're like, well, why should we apply if you're just going to move everyone, in a couple of days? It seems like a waste. And we got the feeling that they weren't going to move everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So, that concerns me on the phase 3 element. And they basically said, we will not go to phase 4 this year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yes,
but
Chris, thoughts on how to do that would be great.
I just wonder if there's a possibility that Dr. James will look at going into phase 3, if we're allowed to do it before other counties, at-risk counties are allowed to, that accommodations can open, but only to people who are residing in phase 3 counties.
Yes.
I mean, there's got to be some kind of attention given to, that some kind of control if we're pushing ahead into phase 3, independent of a lot of counties that are still in phase 2. And then that potentially is bringing in, it's just upping your exposure. And so if there'll be any controls to what accommodations what reservations they can take. I know accommodations wants to be open. I totally support that, but it gets tricky.
No, we've been running this around in our heads the last week on how we do that for the same rationale or reasons you've said.
Mm-hmm.
And, just because we can go into phase 3 doesn't mean the county will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
For some of what you're talking about. I mean, there is a ton of pressure and a lot of people that are getting close to, being out of business. And I also feel that the problem we have is that if we're allowed to go to phase 3, we don't for some of the reasons, there may be a revolt from a lot of the people and they'll just start taking customers anyway and we'll have less control.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway.
The hotel.
I would love to chat. I need to go to my board meeting right now, but thank you all. Nice to see everybody.
Nice to see you. I do want to pipe up that the hotel owners that I've talked to have been okay with limiting visitation by zip code. Like just whatever zip codes are currently in the right phase, they're happy to do that limitation.
Yeah, but how do we do that if the ferries can't, they have no, you know,
They do it
they
on
can't
reservation.
stop anybody from getting on the ferry?
They would
Would
do
they
that by reservation.
Okay,
So if
just based
somebody
on
would reserve-
reservation?
Yeah, and they would be
Okay.
the gate. The ones that I've talked to have
Ferries
said
is willing to do that though.
they're not, but no, not ferries. So the hotel owner would be the gate during reservation times. They would ask the person where they're from and then say, sorry, we can't let you in. And God knows, I mean, that's not policeable either, but it might be something helpful.
Right. I do know of one lodging property who just, you know, had guests just show up and he
Yes.
told them, turn around and get back on the ferry. So, you know, that's going to happen too.
Yes, well, and we've got other lodgings that just went ahead and opened. I mean, that I think we all kind of know that.
Yeah,
So-
well, we figured that the Airbnbs and VRBOs are accepting people that aren't in contact with us and or you guys, you know, they don't really know what's going on.
Right. So I don't know, it's an interesting conundrum.
Yes.
And it's nothing that Rick or anybody else can predict either.
No, I guess I'm glad to hear what Rick said about June 20th. Again, just being a Leary, you know, resident too, but for the industry, you know, in a safe way to
Yes.
have a date and to look forward to that date, hopefully. Yeah.
For the best, prepare for the worst. I think that's all we can do right now. Okay, well, we're getting close to the end of the hour. Does anybody have any more questions or comments? I'm so glad that Rick could come today because we had a lot to talk about with you. Thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
if you do have any other questions, go ahead and email me. And it's info@sanjuansedc.org or victoria@sanjuansedc.org. And I think there's one person on the phone that might not know that, or on the call that might not know that. So thank you, everybody. It's great to see you, and hope you can make it to our community forum tonight from 6 to 7 p.m. We're going to be talking about business, the economy, and jobs. And that info is on our website.